Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for this very special Subtle Cheetah event. My name is Kevin Barnes. I'm one of the founding members and trumpet player with Subtle Cheetah, and we are very excited this afternoon to be joined. Well, I'm excited to be joined by my colleagues from Subtle Cheetah, and also two very special guests, Becky Turo and Madeline Lee. And so today we're doing a special event here. We're going to be talking about our Call for Scores project, which hopefully you've heard of. We're going to talk about last year's Call for Score project in discussion with our special guests, and then we're going to do a little Q&A about this year's project. So yeah, I'm going to start with a little bit about Subtle Cheetah. Hopefully you know who we are, or you're wondering if we're a musical ensemble or some sort of animal conservation project. Well, we are a brass quintet first founded in the summer of 2018 under the auspices of the Orchestra of St. Luke's Chamber Music Mentorship Program. And last year, or 2019-2020, we were very fortunate to be funded by a generous grant from the Alsop Family Foundation that allowed us to create this annual Call for Scores project. And let me talk a little bit about the Call for Scores, because we are currently in the application process for year 2 of the program. And so basically what it is, we are soliciting compositions from composers, anything for brass quintet, brass quartet, or brass trio. And we're going to be picking 3 winners of this Call for Scores. They'll receive a cash prize. They're also going to receive a live concert or a live streamed concert later this year of their piece, depending on public health guides at the time. And they're also going to receive a professional recording of these works. And the application process is really cool. It's completely free. There's no application fee whatsoever. All you really need is your resume, a short biography, headshot, the score of the meeting, of course, and hopefully a MIDI recording of it or a live recording of it as well. We're accepting pieces that are under 25 minutes that have been written within the past 5 years. And this application is going to be open until March 15th, at which point we're going to close it down and have a look through and select our 3 winners. And excitingly enough, we have received over 50 submissions to this so far since we opened the application back in January. So we are really excited at the awesome growth of this program from last year to this year, and we're super happy to be continuing with this program. I want to remind you, if you're watching live, that you can submit questions via the chat on Facebook, or via our Instagram, or anywhere else you find us. We'll see it. If you want to submit a question, we'll find it eventually. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Olivia, who's going to introduce our guests.
All right, welcome everyone. My name is Olivia Petey. I'm the other trumpet player in Subtle Cheetah Brass. So just a quick introduction to everybody in the group. In addition to Kevin and myself, we have Jess Santiago, our French horn player. We have Julie Dombrowski, who plays tenor trombone. And we have Owen Capril, who is our wonderful bass trombonist. So I'm just going to give a very brief bio for each of our guests today. If I leave anything out, please feel free to jump in. But joining us today, we have 2 of our winners from our first inaugural Call for Scores. So first we have Becky Turo. Becky Turo is a composer whose life and music are heavily nature inspired. Having grown up in the mountains of northern New Jersey, her pieces are often drawn to the natural world. Becky is fascinated with translating kinesthetic experiences into musical gestures and tying in elements of poetry into music. Becky received a BM in composition from Rutgers University and is pursuing a master's in composition at Ithaca College. Okay, and then we also have with us Madeline Lee. So Madeline received a Master's of Music and Horn Performance from Columbus State University and a Bachelor of Music, in Education from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. As a horn player, she specializes in composing and arranging in the brass medium. And in addition to composing, Madeline is currently the director of bands for Northumberland County Public Schools in Heathsville, Virginia. So welcome to both of our composers.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you guys for being here to talk with us today. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about your pieces that won our last year's call for scores. So Becky's piece, Breathing Lessons, and Madeline's piece, Grip It, and which we have been really happy to be able to perform and perform in some of our outdoors park concerts last summer and last fall as well. And they always get a great reception from whatever audience. They're awesome pieces. And we're actually going to hear a little bit of each piece right now. Shall we start maybe with Becky's piece, Breathing Lessons? This was a piece when we when we went to assess all of the submissions from last year, we were just really blown away by sort of the beautiful melodies and the beautiful harmonies and the very evocative nature of the piece, which was the primary reason that we chose it. So let's go ahead and hear a bit of Breathing Lessons by Becky Turo.
Yeah, excellent. Hang on, I might not have hit share original sound, forgive me. Nope, I did. Y'all all heard that? Excellent. There's nothing.
Let me ask.
We'll leave you right there with a little bit of a suspense as to what's to come.
Amazing. And then let's also hear a little bit of Grip It and Rip It by Madeline Lee, which was just a very energetic piece that we just loved the spirit of and sort of the Scottish influence of it all. So let's hear a bit of Grip It and Rip It.
And we'll end right there with some more suspense as well.
Okay,
you can
great.
check out the website to listen to the rest of those on your own, all on the Subtle Cheetah website.
Yeah, please check them out. And then I also just want to mention that our third winning composer from last year, Eva Fabianska-Jelinska, who's a Polish composer, was unfortunately unable to join us for this today, but you can hear our recording of her piece, Chorale and Toccatina, on our website, subtlecheetahbrass.com. So yeah, I'm now, and we'll get started with talking to our composer friends.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a couple of questions for you that we just, kind of made together to talk a little bit about you guys and what you might be up to, or I should say ladies. First question, I guess I'm going to turn it over to Becky, because Madeline, I know that you play horn. Becky, what is your primary instrument again?
Piano.
Piano. And how did you get inspired to start composing?
It was definitely, I started composing a lot in high school. I was really lucky that my high school band director, James Islanian, was also a composer. He wrote like some really cool pieces for our band and stuff like that. I played saxophone in high school too. And so he was able to like give me some lessons and give me some projects. And so that's where it all started. Okay. And did you always have a feeling like, I think I want to try writing music, or was it just something that someone suggested you do? It's interesting because I've been playing piano since I was like really, really young, and I've always been really interested in theory. And so I guess it kind of started off with, I would do like my theory assignments, and I'd start like kind of improvising, be like, ooh, this is cool. What happens if I do this? And so it started off with just like my own little like improvisations on the piano, and then it became a little bit more serious in high school. So
That's amazing. I was always curious, but I never got to the actually writing down stage. So kudos to you. Okay. So I guess I'm going to just turn over the same question. We'll kind of just go back and forth. So a horn player to horn player. I have to say, Madeline, you write some really awesome rips, not just for myself, but for the other instruments as well. So since I know that you play the horn, how did you end up playing the French horn?
Well, I started on piano young as well, and that's probably where my compositional background comes from. But I took strings in 6th grade, and I liked playing it, but that class really wasn't for me. My brother did band and did marching band, so I was like, I want to do the band. And I wanted to play percussion or trumpet or literally not the horn. And I remember Mr. Reeves was like, hey, you played piano, you should probably give horn a try. And so I did, and I studied with my teacher Damian Bellino here in Stafford for a bit, and all through high school, and I just really loved it. And it was really when I learned what horn was, which instrument it was, and all of the music I was listening to. I'm like, oh, that instrument sounds cool. I'm glad to be playing that. And so I played that through high school, and now I play all of the instruments. Not well, but it's just out of necessity. Yeah, that's really where I got started with horn. And then composing, I would play around with stuff on the piano. I wrote my first small piece for piano when I was in 7th grade. And then I got really into arranging, actually. And because I wanted to do jazz band, but there weren't horns in jazz band, so I would, with my pencil and paper, write out my music, and the trumpet parts transposed, and got finale. And I just did stuff for marching band. And I did that for a long time. And it wasn't until college I really started writing. I was like, I think I could do this. I've been arranging enough, I've been studying enough in that way. I think this is something I could do. And that's when I really took an interest in writing and composing.
That's so inspiring to me. I don't know. I'm just always thinking to myself, composers are just the lifeblood of music. Without you, we couldn't do our jobs. Amazing. All right. So let's continue. Let's keep going and talk about any current composition projects that you might be working on. I know this year has been quite the year. For me, myself, I have only really been focusing on Subtle Cheetah. Right before the quarantine, I premiered a brand new double concerto for French horn, and then just kind of stopped it. It was really hard. So, if you're not working on anything, no, don't worry about that, because I'm not. I'm still just going through some classic, coprash, the usual, keeping things in shape. But yeah, any current composition projects or any current, ideas that you've been thinking of during this COVID time? If whoever wants to go first.
Yeah. Yes, I actually just finished, or I'm wrapping up a piece that I wrote for two of my friends for flute and piano. And one of the good things is that I'm housemates with the pianist who's going to be playing it, so that is really helpful. And then it's been lots of Zoom meetings with the flute player. But it's also because I'm getting my master's at Ithaca right now, so it's been really nice to just be able to be in the area with people, which has been really good. And then I have my master's composition recital in late April, so I've been finishing up some things for that. So, but yeah.
That's incredible. Is that going to be live streamed?
Yes, it will. Yes, I can send you guys the link if you'd like.
Please do. Please do. Would love to attend. And then just a kind of a follow-up question on that. I'm sure there must have been challenges with composing a little bit too. Is there anything you want to talk to about that, or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think with each project that I was working on during COVID, it's gotten a lot easier to really collaborate. And I think like one of the biggest things was one of the challenges was just not being in the same room as the flute player. But we were able to set up every other week we'd have a Zoom meeting, and she'd bring her flute, and I'd just toss questions back and forth. So that was definitely one big thing that was able to be solved, which was good.
Again, so inspiring that you've been able to continue. Madeline, how about you?
Well, I think initially when everything kind of shut down, I didn't think it was going to be for that long. So I definitely kept writing. I wrote a piece for 8 trombones for Brad Palmer at Columbus State, because he had asked me a while back, like, hey, you want to write something? So I finished that, and I got to do a commission with a woodwind camp, the Judith Lappel Summer Woodwind Camp. You know, they did a virtual concert and you know, all virtual woodwind camp, and did some of that. And then I think for a while I kind of stopped writing because it kind of seemed like there wasn't a real end to this. And so I just worked on writing for my band and that. And then I was asked to join a consortium called Notes of Remembrance, and it will benefit the Alzheimer's Foundation. And so it's a lot of projects, but a lot of things have definitely been sort of put on hold. And, you know, the constant holding pattern, I'm sure, you know, everyone, especially musicians and people who need to have concerts and whatnot to work, it's been kind of frustrating, but, you know, it's definitely given me time to also take a step back from a lot of my obligations and kind of refresh and start writing again. And fortunately, one of my pieces, it's called Wind or the Highlands, was selected for the Women Composing for Trumpet competition. So hopefully they'll have that, you know, they're planning on having that virtual concert in August. And so there's been a couple of bright lights in there, but also it's been a good chance to kind of step back and really, I guess, take time to gather the things that inspire me anyway, and just do a little bit of studying and sort of revamp myself as a writer as well.
Awesome stuff here. Thanks again for doing this and just sharing, because it's, you know, it's difficult. It's been difficult, you know, different and difficult for everybody. And I just want to open this up to see if any other cheetahs have any other follow-up questions, or if I should just keep on rolling with it. No? All good? Okay. All right then. So next up, let's talk about your winning pieces from last year. Obviously, we love them a lot. And you know, I have to say, like, we've played them a bunch now, especially since we went out this fall and did our little pop-up series. We didn't know at first if they'd work outside, but then we're like, you know, let's give it a try. And the audience loved it. They loved hearing new music, you know, just walking through the city. So that was really exciting to take that out to the public a little bit more. And we're going to re-record them this spring / summer / whenever we can get into a recording studio. And so we're super excited with that now that we've like lived with them for a little bit, because it's such great writing, so many intricate details in there, which is so nice, but also very accessible pieces of music, at least from a horn player's point of view too. Yes, that's always key. Got to look at the horn part first. So yeah, if you want to chat a little bit maybe about you can take some time to talk about whether you composed the piece for the call for scores, or if it was something that you had, or maybe how you approached it, or what inspired you to, you know, submit to our call for scores, really anything you want to chat about. So Becky, if you want to go first.
Yeah, sure. So this was a piece that I had sketched a few years before. I was inspired to write it because I actually, literally all of my friends, this was freshman year at Rutgers, they were all brass players, especially trumpet players. And so I was like, I want to write a piece for you guys. And then it was also cool because I was like attending all their like brass concerts and stuff. So I was like listening to all the brass music, and it was interesting because I feel like, while I was listening, I was like really inspired to find a way to kind of like fit my sound inside like a brass world, which was also because I've never written for brass instruments before. So it was really cool. So we had a performance of the piece, but it's like under a different name. And then a few years later, I think it was like my senior year, I took it back and like made some edits. And then a couple months later, I heard about your call for scores. It was like, oh, now I want to make this really good for them. And so that's how that came to be.
Very cool. Oh, what a fun story. Awesome. Madeline?
I had actually started this piece, I think it was probably May before the call for scores, because one of the groups that I worked with was like, oh, you should write something that features more trumpet, because go figure, I'm always writing things that feature horn. But so sorry about that first trumpet part. But I wanted to write something that's good for trumpet, and I'm like, the phrase that kept coming to mind is like something I could just grip it and rip it, like, you know, and it's funny. And sometimes I think I'm funnier than I am most of the time, and my students tell me that. But I'm like, oh, wouldn't that be such a funny title for a piece? Grip it and rip it. And it's just this crazy thing for trumpet. And so I decided to go with that. And I'm like, well, that's a golf term. So it's got to have like a little bit of a Scottish, Irish, Celtic sort of feel to it. And I wrote about half of it. And then I was moving from Georgia back to Virginia. And I finished it right before this call for scores was due, because one of my friends told me like, hey, you should check this out. So I'm like, well, I have a piece that started and I don't know when it's going to get played, so I might as well just, turn it in. So that was kind of the motivation behind doing this. And that happens with a lot of call for scores, where it's like, oh, I was kind of working on this, but it fits for this competition. I might finish it, which is really nice to be able to just have a finished work. So that's the story.
That's amazing. So for anyone who is watching or listening, tell your friends, because 2 of our winners were inspired or encouraged from their friends. So that's really great, just to hear that. And I guess to both of you, did you enjoy writing for brass instruments? And, and are you willing to write for more brass quintets for any other brass people who might be listening looking for composers? Right?
For sure. It was definitely a challenge because I've like played saxophone, I play piano, so like brass is something that I've never really like done. So but it was a lot of fun, especially like working with my friends and stuff like that. And it's definitely something I want to give another stab at. So yes.
Okay, amazing. Great. You're looking for work. Okay. All right. So we covered a little bit about what inspired you to write for brass instruments. Let's talk about composing in general. If anybody wants to talk about their process, I actually teach, not teach composing, but I do, I'm a teaching artist for the Med Opera Guild. So we do students compose opera, and I, act like a composer, and I get out my whole composer's toolbox and I say, first we're going to do this, So I have a couple of ideas in mind myself, but let's definitely hear about your processes, whatever you're willing to share, inspo, or even just the process of handwriting or going straight to software. And yeah, let's start with Madeline first this time, switching it up.
I like to, a lot of times I'll just be messing around the piano. Sometimes I feel bad, like I'm not an official composer, because I really don't do a lot of handwriting anything. I've just, through arranging, I've become surprisingly, I'm bad at computers, but I know how to use Finale pretty well. And so I can usually just go straight over to the computer and start sketching out ideas. But it honestly depends on what I'm writing and why, but usually I like to have a story behind it. And that sounds super cliche, oh, there's a story behind it, but I think it helps me because some of my favorite types of music are film scores, and I listen to a lot of them, and I love the composers like Strauss, Rachmaninoff, all those big composers that inspired film writers. And so I think to me that helps me better formulate an idea than a concept. But usually I have a journal, I'll just write down ideas, and if I'm like, oh, I really like this key for this concept, I'll just take notes and keep writing. And that can get tough, but I think sometimes just going back and listening to some of my favorite pieces too helps get the wheels turning again. What did I like about this? What can I do that's similar, but it's in my own words? How do I use these musical plot devices to tell my story? And I think also just generally having a good working knowledge of music theory tends to help that as well. And I have students now that I teach that will ask about composing, and I'm like, oh, I want to explain it, but I know you don't know this stuff yet, then it's not going to make sense. But just having a really good background knowledge of it all has been helpful in giving me the right tools for it. So yeah, just telling stories and your music theory, it's like the Wheaties of a musician. Mm-hmm. I just need them.
That's great. No, I thought I heard you mention you consider a key for a concept.
Yes. So one of the trombone piece I wrote recently, it's called Le Cathédrale, which is my terrible French accent. It's the cathedral. And it was actually, I thought about the burning of the Notre Dame. And so I did a little bit of research on that, and it looked up the key of the bells because I wanted to have a section that was like the bells ringing, and they're pitched in, they're pretty much pitched in G flat. And so I originally wrote it in G flat, and then I was told, hey, it'd be a lot more playable a half step either direction. So I did end up changing it, but like that kind of stuff, I like to do little research like that sometimes, and identify certain keys, and then to me, different keys have different feelings. Like E flat feels very Celtic to me, very green. I don't know, but it just depends on what I'm working on, what I'm trying to say, and also what instruments I'm writing for too.
So cool, so cool. Thanks for that. All right, Becky.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go off of what Madeline said about the story, because even though it does sound cliche, I remember when I first started taking like composition lessons from my band director, he kind of was like, every piece can tell a story, and so that has definitely been like ingrained in my brain, I think. But then, and it's interesting because I feel like depending on, I try to change my process a little bit, but I think one of the main things that I usually stick to in beginning a piece is I like to have like a specific like image in my mind, like even with like breathing lessons, like the idea of people like breathing out in different type of ways. And so I'll start with like an image or even like a title. And then what I'll actually do is I'll kind of like write down just like with words, like I'll kind of like plan out the entire piece and be like, okay, this section I want to be like this section I want to be like this, and kind of like write it all out with words first. And then I'll start like diving into it with like sketches and stuff like that. But I'm also a very melodic composer too, so sometimes I'll like have like a melody first. So it really depends on on what the situation is.
Very cool, but still, thank you for sharing that process. Everyone's got their own way of doing things, so that's really, really unique, and sharing that insight in case there's any composers listening. All right. So we're almost nearing our end of questions in case any other cheetahs have any other thoughts. Okay. Oh, all right. Sorry, I had to read ahead for that one. So you submitted, obviously, you were winners for our call for scores. Why do you feel that call for score projects are important? And if there's anything that maybe you got out of working with us, Subtle Cheetah, or, just submitting through our call for scores, if you felt like, there were any positive things about that process that you would like to share with the public, or if there's not so nice things, feel free to give us some feedback too. We can take it. Whoever, wants to go first, if anyone's got an idea. Go ahead.
I'll go ahead. I think the call for scores, these types of things are really important because, A, it gets new music out there. That's the obvious thing. And B, on a personal level, it forces you to finish a piece of music. And I think I read, like Eric Whitaker said this, he's like, you have nothing to lose from entering competitions. Worst case scenario is you have a completed piece of music. And I think he talked about how one of his, I can't remember which piece, but like one of his most famous ones didn't win. And it's, and it's funny because we think about him, we're like, how can he not win? But sometimes they don't. And, you have nothing to lose. And a lot of times too, you'll get feedback, and that's really important. I put in a flute piece a year or two ago, and they're like, hey, flutes can't do this. And it's like, great, I won't write that again. So, it's just, it is really helpful. And then on the side of that, where, you do get to work with a group of humans who are playing your music, and not just the MIDI files that can do anything, they'll tell you, hey, this isn't really idiomatic, or maybe try writing this a little differently. Because, playing horn, you think like, oh, if I can play horn, I can do all that stuff. But no, like trombone, and especially that's one I have to think about a lot too, because it's like, can they really like move as fast as I'm writing it? Are there other ways? And so yeah, just really being able to have that honest feedback, and a lot of times it is pretty honest, which is what we need. I don't think we should live in, this like, oh, that was a good try, I liked it, I'd never really play that piece. I think it is important for us to learn how to really write for the instruments, and to really get the honest feedback. So I've found this to be very beneficial, and just the whole idea of call for scores, just to help me as a writer and to push me to write for, even because I'm very comfortable in brass, but I like doing the ones that aren't brass too, because it pushes me to learn how to write for different instruments that, God help me if I'm writing for clarinet, but that's pretty much how I feel about it.
All right, cool. Awesome. Well, yay. Go ahead. I have a follow-up question, but I want to hear from Becky first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think just to follow up with what Madeline was all saying, because I totally agree with everything that she said. Those are all really good points. I think it also is a good chance for like composers to really put your name out there, even if it doesn't get selected. People, if they keep seeing your name, like that'll stick in their mind. And then it's interesting because for call for scores, it's like different from like a commission or like a collaboration, because you're sending like a complete like totally finished work to someone. So it's an interesting way to like say hello. It's like, this is my complete work. And then it's also just a great way to get to meet new people and new fantastic musicians. And then of course with the Subtle Cheetah call for scores in particular, like the fact that they live in New York City and have like they get to go, they're going around and playing our pieces out on the streets of New York City right now, like that is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And then the recording that you guys made was also like fantastic, and it was just, and then it's nice that I live so close to New York City, so I was able to come to the concert and see you guys in person. And so it's a great way to make friends, make collaborations, and to make some good music. So all positive experiences.
Yeah, that's right. I remember you came in, and that was amazing that you got to speak to our audience too about your piece. They got to hear from a living composer. So many of those little things that, average, like non-classical music attendees don't realize, that it's like a big deal to have a living composer talking about their piece before you listen to it. So really cool. All right. So my follow-up question is that I this might be controversial, I don't know. I actually discovered, and I didn't run this by the cheetahs either, I actually discovered there's a little bit of a debate whether it should be call for scores or call for submissions. And I thought about that, and I thought to myself, that's true, because not every composer might have the means to write a score, right? I'm assuming that that's kind of, maybe that's what that's addressing. And I was curious if either of you had any thoughts about that, because like I said, we're always, we tweaked this year's application a little bit, and I'm sure that next year we'll be also kind of tweaking that too, because we always have to look back at what we're doing and make sure that what we're putting out there is accessible to everybody that we want to reach. So any thoughts on that, or is this going to be a new debate for our winning composers this year?
I like that, because I think it allows for potential, because I think call for scores can sound kind of like intimidating, again, for people who like aren't, like maybe they want to give it a shot and they haven't like composed a lot of stuff, or if they don't even have like the software that most composers have to, but if they are able to submit like a recording or something like that, or even just like sketches or some ideas or something, I think that's a really cool thing to open it up to all different types of composers. So
All right, we're gonna, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, even if it ends up people send in the same types of things, like they send in scores or what, it does sound, I guess it can sound like intimidating. Like score sounds like such a finalized, finished like product. And I know especially there's times where like, well, I have this piece, it's done, it's not where I want it to be, but it's like, you should send those in anyway, because you never know. And yeah, I think it is it's an interesting verbiage, and I didn't think about how different that would sound. But yeah, when I do see scores of like finished work, like published with a cover and everything,
yeah,
that sounds it can sound a little intimidating, especially for younger writers.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate that feedback, because it's definitely something that is worth considering. We are a brass quintet that likes to play, or that aims to play music by underrepresented composers, and so that has to be everyone. So thanks for that. And definitely worth us and other groups having that discussion, because I see a lot of call for scores around. All right. Well, we reached our last question. And so I just want to check in with Julie, who's been monitoring if there's been any other submissions. Have we had anything? No?
Well, it looks like we might have had a little issue with the live stream, but we have this recorded, so we're going to post it to Facebook, YouTube after. And if you're watching this recorded instead of live, feel free. You can always reach out to us at either email at subtlecheetahbrass@gmail.com or info@subtlecheetahbrass.com. You can always send us a message on Instagram or Facebook, or you can get in contact with us through our website, www.subtlecheetahbrass.com. A lot of Subtle Cheetah Brass. You're headed in the right direction if you're typing that in. And if you really enjoyed this event and want to see more, you can sign up for our newsletter, The Spot, also on our website, and we will always share new events and opportunities like this. Every month it comes out. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Julie. All right. So our last question is just asking for some tips for musicians on working with composers and possibly maybe how to approach a composer about writing a piece. So please take it away. Let's hear from Becky. Let's go back to Becky first.
Yeah, I think what I've been learning is that I think one of the most like successful like collaborations between like composer and performer is when the performer is really open to being a part of the creative process too. And I think that it's just like so important because like I am not an expert on your instrument, so like being able to like with the piece I was writing for my friends for the flute and piano piece, I actually had my friend Parky, I had her the flutist, she played, I had her improvise like a few cadenzas, and I was like, and we recorded it, and I was like, I gave her like some parameters, like I want kind of like this range and maybe these techniques and maybe use some like motives from like previous, but I want to see what you come up with, and that was really, really cool because it really opened it up and made it mean something for like the both of us too. So I think having that and also meeting up with each other during the creative process is just really, really beneficial for both people. So I would say that is the biggest thing for me.
Awesome. Thanks for that tip. I like that tip. I love working with composers one-on-one. I had the great opportunity in undergrad to work with a lot of composers, and it was super beneficial for me as a horn player too. Okay, Madeline, go ahead.
I think I definitely, excuse me, agree with Becky about how you want it, especially if someone is asking you to write something, how you really want them to be part of that process too. I think also, taking into consideration their musicianship and understanding, that there's a mutual agreement that they'll give you help on writing for that instrument, but also without trying to change your creative ideas. Because I've had, situations where it's like a great collaboration, it works really well, and situations where it's like, you're asking me to change the essence of what it is that I'm doing. That can get a little dicey here and there, and you never want any kind of conflict in that way. But it's also just the trust that the people that you're collaborating with are going to give you that room to be creative while also helping you make the piece the best it can be. And part of that too comes from understanding who you're collaborating with as well. And I know that seems like, I don't mean that to be like a negative spin on like, oh, these are great, but I think it's a realistic thing that composers need to understand, like look at who you're working with and, the types of music they play and what they're gonna want more from you. And if that's not really your style of composing or not what you're really interested in, then maybe it's not a good collaboration. Like, for me, I love that very, like I said, movie sounding, very almost cliched. Like I live for that. I'm not as much of a more modern composer contemporary, so I wouldn't necessarily take on that kind of a collaboration. But definitely communication is always really, really good with the musicians, and just make your thoughts known, and be honest with them and have them be honest with you. And it usually is a really good relationship and collaboration.
Awesome. Well, I definitely think those tips are helpful for me. I don't know how anybody else feels, but that officially wraps up the questions that we kind of had to follow up a little bit and get to know you and maybe help out some of the other composers that are interested in applying to our call for scores, which closes on March 15th. You have the whole day to apply though, just in case. But I think with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin, our little host. But thank you so much for all of that feedback. That was really great. And it was nice to chat with you. I know it's not in person, but that was really nice social interaction.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you guys so much. That was super insightful. And it's always great to talk to the people who are, out there doing the work. So I actually did just want to open it up to everyone else, Subtle Cheetah, for a question or other questions we had. I would just love to make one point. You guys talked a lot about sort of the collaboration of being a composer and working with musicians. And I think probably something that everyone in the group is pretty familiar with. Approaching a new piece of music, maybe it's an orchestra, maybe it's a student composer event, maybe it's a call for scores like we're doing right now, and sort of finding that we've been presented with a completely unplayable piece of music. Brass can tend to be a little bit hard to write for someone who isn't very familiar with it. And I just wanted to point out, when we approached your pieces last year, how wonderfully written for brass they were and how appreciative we were of your knowledge of it. Madeline, I know you said sorry for the first trumpet part in your piece, and I personally had to struggle to work many hours of my life, but there's a difference between something being unplayable and something being a unique challenge. And that's something that we really appreciate, and really just speaks to the collaborative nature of not just composing, but of being in a chamber music group as we are. So yeah, thanks for that. And I'll just open it up to any other cheetahs who want to jump in there.
Yeah, I just have one brief thing that struck me when we were talking about kind of the benefit of these call for scores programs. And something I think Becky had mentioned about just kind of getting your name out there, even if you don't win, that's beneficial. And one thing I just kind of want composers who are interested in applying to know is, we're limited to the number of winners that we can pick, but oftentimes when we're reviewing these submissions, there's a lot more music that we see that we want to add to our repertoire. So I would really encourage anybody to apply and submit, and even though we can't pick as many winners as the pieces that we like, we've had conversations about how could we reach out to this composer and still find a way to make this piece a part of our repertoire, even if we can't pick it as the winner for this specific project. So we're looking to grow our repertoire beyond 3 new pieces. So I definitely want to encourage everyone to apply, because I think that the composers were right, that the opportunity is not just this one specific competition. I think it goes beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, unless anyone has anything else, I want to say thank you very, very, very much to Becky and Madeline for joining us today. This was, like I said, so insightful and just awesome to get to talk to you guys and, continue working with you guys past just last year's call for scores.
This was a pleasure. Thank you guys so much.
It's been really great. And then,
awesome.
Yeah, thank you for putting this together. It's really great.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, amazing. And check us out online, like Julie said, subtlecheetahbrass.com. Follow us on Instagram, Subtle Cheetah Brass. Find us on Facebook, Subtle Cheetah Brass. We're all Subtle Cheetah Brass all over the place. And again, apologies for the technical difficulties that we encountered during this live stream. So anywhere earlier you heard me talking about live, that's okay, forget it. But yeah, March 15th is the deadline to submit for our call for scores. Again, just hop onto the website, find the application form and anything else you need. And yeah, Becky, Madeline, thank you. Subtle Cheetah, thank you guys for this great thing. And everyone stay healthy and safe out there. And we're looking forward to interacting with all of you and being back on stage really soon. So thank you all, and have a wonderful day, everyone.